Hello and welcome to Give and Toke, the show that elevates the conversation about cannabis to a higher level. I'm your host, Paul O'Donoghue, and today we welcome Kate Avruch, who is the founder of Operator Academy and is a seasoned expert in the cannabis industry, having dedicated her career to scaling business operations in Massachusetts and beyond. With a unique blend of technical expertise in facility design, cannabis chemistry, and extraction methodologies, Kate brings a holistic understanding of the industry's complexities. If you like what you hear on today's show, please be sure to leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. These reviews and ratings help us reach more listeners because cannabis is a highly censored topic. You can also get in touch with us at Give and Toke on Instagram or by emailing giveandtoke@gmail.com. And be sure to check out giveandtoke.com.au to check out our range of great accessories. But for now, please enjoy my conversation with Kate Avruch. Now, I want to kick it off, straight out of Brookline, Massachusetts. What do you think is the best Boston movie of all time? I'm a kind of The Departed, The Town guy. Where do you lie?
Yeah. Okay. Those are institutional classics, just like absolute instant classics when they came out. But my go-to is always The Town. I feel like I can't think of anything past that. The accents are spot on.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like the biggest problem with Boston movies is they really just like overcommit. The Afflecks, like, God bless them. Like, I understand you're from here, but they sometimes just go a little overboard. And it's nice to feel like it was produced by people that really just like used the city and not just like the cute parts of, downtown and the really well polished, cute imagery we have of this historic Boston, but like, the gritty projects that we have, ranging from Chelsea to Dorchester and Everett. And I don't know, just it felt like it really bounced around and showcased what things are actually like and not this like rose tinted glasses version of a postcard that we typically see about Visit Boston.
Are you born and bred there?
No, no. So I kind of identify myself split Mainer and Massachusetts. When I was younger, we resided up in Maine and then we moved down to Massachusetts. So I spent the majority of my time down here, but now as an adult, I feel like I split my time between the two states, just through a lot of different work and personal endeavors. But I don't know. There's a couple places that I call home, but New England is really just a beautiful region, and we're lucky to have very short distances between a number of places that feel very familiar. So
That is something cool about the United States where, you can kind of attach yourself to a region. Like our country is quite massive and sparse. So therefore, like where you live is kind of the bubble that you live in. But I do really like that about the States where, you can get an hour down the road on an Amtrak and you're in a different state. So that's pretty cool.
yeah, it would be cool if I could get to New York in less than a couple of hours, but it's all very doable, and I feel very blessed to be in New England and be able to do that because I've definitely lived in other states like Oregon where you could be driving 8 hours and you are still in Oregon. So it's a bit more of a commitment in some places, I think.
Yeah, first class on the Acela Express ain't all it cracked up to be from Boston to New York. But yeah, it's an awesome part of the world. It's a place I've got a huge fondness to, and it's really nice to talk to you today coming straight out of Massachusetts. So, Kate, from snowboarding camp to patient services and dispensary management to cannabis consulting, tell me how you found your way to cannabis.
Yeah, so I was working in just, what I would call like emergency medicine or outdoor medicine. I got my wilderness EMT and bounced around and worked at a lot of different camps and what are on hill, so on mountain. And I really loved working with the snow sports and working with a lot of different snowboarders and pro athletes. And unfortunately, it just doesn't pay a lot. So after working in that for a number of years, I came back to visit my family. And ironically, in my hometown in Franklin is where one of the first dispensary cultivation facilities was open. And I applied to a job as a trimmer just while I was home because it was, nearly $4 an hour more than what I was making back in Colorado. And I just felt like, I really did miss the East Coast. We could kind of chat it offline a little bit, but, the United States, I've lived in a number of places, and the West Coast just has a very different vibe. And the East Coast is really home to me. So I just I felt a pull to come back and really figure out what I could do. We are in Boston, sorry.
Emergency services guest vocals there. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so I mean, like I really loved what I did, but unfortunately, it just wasn't cutting the chops for what I wanted to do. And I was still in school to eventually get my nursing degree, and I just really decided to try to take a pause on everything and just reassess where I was, and applied to work at Meta and got the job. So it was kind of just like one step into another after that. The industry really started to grow, and no pun intended. And in the beginning, really, there was only two, three brands that had, four different locations, whereas the company I was working for had two of those eventual retails. So we really had such a unique opportunity because I got to grow with not only one of the first, if not the second, cultivation facility in the East Coast, east of Colorado. And I could never touch this before, by the way. Like I couldn't smoke at all because, again, I was getting drug tested every week as an EMT. So to me, this was pretty interesting. And I still didn't consume when I did actually join on the team, and I didn't for a while actually after that. And I thought the whole process was really interesting. I applied to be a trimmer and found out really quickly that it's not a job for me. I have so much respect to trimmers, but my body is so allergic to the live plant, and I was breaking out in hives like
Wow.
crazy. So I lasted maybe like 2 weeks in there before they were just like, no, this isn't
Yeah.
working.
That's crazy. Usually it's the repetitive stress injury, from the chopping nonstop, but
Yeah,
full allergies, that sucks.
yeah, I mean, I think people forget it is a plant. And, I have a lot of seasonal allergies and allergies to plants. So this didn't really seem that crazy. And now looking back as well on what I know now, there are tons of different agents within the plant that act as actual like pest and predator deterrents. And those terpenes are very volatile and can be very destructive when touching your skin. They're essential oils, so a lot of those, especially the citrus leaning ones, that's the basis of a lot of cleaning chemicals. Think of like the Goo Gone and like orange cleaners. So it does make sense. It's just, again, I had no clue. I think that nobody really understood back then either because I got mercilessly made fun of for this, by the way. This was not like a you get out of jail free card. It was just like you're a liability. You need to go to another department. Um, so it was kind of a blessing in disguise though, because then I started working in the kitchen, and the kitchen was also part of the lab. So I worked in the extraction lab, got my first formal experience into hydrocarbon extraction and just true manufacturing at scale. And to me, this was so cool to see all these different machines and a commercial kitchen. And they had a hired chocolatier and all these different professionals that really were like consummate in their own right. And now we're doing it for cannabis. To me, this was just like so cool. Still is, still really is. I think that really set everything off. And then from there, once we started developing the retail stores, I really just went with the company because I didn't really care. I was back in my parents' house, and I had the opportunity to have a paid apartment for like 4 months and to go live across the state. I was like, see ya. So for me, it was really just like the perfect fit for a while. And I got the opportunity to work as a bud tender, and I really loved it. I loved working with patients and clients and just learning more about all the different reasons why people consume and like finding the puzzle of like why people should be using this product versus that product. And then, after a couple of years in, you really start to be like, okay, I took the time to learn about the strains, the applications, condition, effects, related studies. And at that point, they promoted me to be the lead trainer. And I started developing training programs for anybody and everybody who walked through those doors. So investors, anytime they had different people that they would want to show off their accomplishments to, whether it was state regulators or health board officials, I would walk them through and explain what we were doing. And then really just created this cross diversified program where I helped educate people in all parts of the process. We were mandated to be vertically integrated, so that seed to sale model had to be all within one. However, it didn't necessarily mean that there was a lot of understanding from even the regulators on what they were looking at. So there was a lot of back and forth conversation about why we did certain things and why the regulation should adjust and reflect for certain things. So it's a very open process here, although we are, very much in respect to whatever they say. Like, we're not pushing back. It's really an opportunity to try to educate them on what we're doing and try to help encourage them to then hopefully make regulations that can help support the industry for what our unique needs are. So I did that for a while and then really just found myself, the regulatory structure made it so that we were no longer opening more stores. We'd kind of peaked in our industry. We were seeing about 700 people a day at max. So it's a lot for one location. And then, after that, I really just realized like I need a new opportunity. I need a new sandbox to play in. I loved what I did there. I love the people that I worked with. And they made an incredible variety of products, especially for being one of the first out here. They really standardized the pricing models and expectations for people. So it was cool to be able to then leave and take on a new venture. And basically from there, what I ended up doing is working with a newer company called Theory Wellness. I was, one of the first 20 employees, and I oversaw the development of their retail. So I hired all of them, all of the first round employees, got to train them and really work with them to see everything from that manufacturing side over through retail, and then the eventual development of the second store. And same kind of song and dance there, but just a very different scale. Got to leave a little bit of a bigger mark because now I was in charge of the retail, whereas before I was only in charge of, training via customer service. And, this industry moves really fast. It's about 2.5 years, at each spot, and I start to get really edgy. So I moved on and started my own consulting agency because I just really loved the scale of what I was doing, but I didn't love the speed. And this isn't anything against the companies themselves. It truly is everything against how slow the development of the regulations were. So it just took forever for anything to happen. And I realized as a consultant, I had a unique opportunity to really work with a variety of people. And throughout that, I had a couple of really great opportunities and stepped way further into not only helping individual licensees on a number of operational challenges and who I really call vertically minded. So not all my clients need to be vertically integrated by any means, but a lot of them are, or they're thinking about that in collaboration with other people. But really what I did there is I started to work with a number of clients and bring their companies to life. And at the same time, started to create a number of different training initiatives that then were moved into courses, whether it was in person, online. And I ended up working with the state to create 9 of the first 11 of the nation's first social equity Cannabis Control Commission training program. So the whole focus was on creating training, everything from business, basics to advanced topics and everything in retail and manufacturing, and really a focus on helping develop a number of topics to then help them run their businesses successfully. I really enjoyed that, but I realized that there's a number of limitations with working with just a state program, and it was up to them to admit the students. So I had an opportunity to create a cannabis college within college, and I created, along with a number of other really excellent people, the Cannabis Education Center over at Holyoke Community College. And that's New England's largest community college. So really just an institution of its own right. Came into a number of millions of dollars when redeveloping their facility because they had a partnership with a local casino for their hospitality center, for their kitchens. So we were really lucky to be able to build a partnership with them and create cannabis workforce training programs that you pick your track. So one of 4 different jobs with the focus of you come in, it's a 100-hour workforce training program. 50 hours is in the classroom, so 8-hour Saturdays. And then the other 50 hours would be in a complementary internship with a local business. So the focus really was to try to give people skills both in like jobs, but also to then give them very specific technical skills that would be, really just attractive to any sort of cannabis company. Unfortunately, COVID only allowed us to do one iteration of that, but that one block that we did do has been phenomenally successful. the students from there have really moved on to continue to be in the industry for the most part. There are some outliers, but the chunk that are, they're really running into their own businesses now, or are higher ups. And it's just great to see people apply themselves and apply the skills. And yeah, I mean, I guess from there, it's just been a number of things. I've been a, part owner in a in a manufacturing license here in Massachusetts that produced cannabis infused ice cream. We've worked with also American International College, created both their graduate cannabis and science program and their undergraduate cannabis and commerce program. And really from there, just like realized I love doing all this training. I love doing these courses. The virtual programming is pretty cool. I think everyone has kind of grown with it since COVID times as well, to be a lot more virtually friendly and now actually lean into it as something that they want instead of something that's a chore. Now that we're not required to be on 1,000 Zoom meetings. And yeah, and from there, I just, I really got inspired by doing this for other people and really wanting to convert. At this point, I've been doing my consultancy since 2019. So it's been a number of years, and I feel like I'm just really become a great organizational and educational expert in working with other subject matter experts through my consultancy. And now what I'm trying to do is really bring that value through my business. And Operator Academy is a virtual workforce training academy that focuses on providing entry and intermediate level solutions for owners and operators. So it's what I call boots and suits. So boots on the ground, the technical operators, suits, management, and ownership. So, highly technical education that's made by and for the people that run in these labs that have had years of experience in manufacturing, and then really aligned with and made in partnership with a number of trade organizations like ASTM, ASME, and just a number of safety organizations that have been around and operate outside of cannabis, but very much want to participate in their own right without necessarily getting involved. So I am a happy bridge and conduit to all areas of information. And my focus really is on creating resources that are actionable for people and help really just reinforce safety standards and industrial hygiene in a way that doesn't feel so obtrusive, but really feels like it's helping create a standard in an emerging industry where honestly we're playing a game of pass the ball. Anytime there has been safety industry issues, we tend to not really get the respect that we would if it was literally any other facility. So I've been doing this now I'm coming up with my 10-year anniversary of working legal lead. And I'm just very, very excited about this project. I'm currently in the redevelopment of the web platform. I think anybody who works in cannabis has had their struggles with censorship and just a lack of clarity as far as what people will allow online. So just moving over to a new community platform, which is actually a blessing in disguise. Now we're going to have a membership site that allows people to, comment like similar like a Discord. So all for the better, but definitely excited for that switch. And I guess that was a very long-winded answer of how we got here. Who am I? What are we doing?
I love it because there's such a breadth of things there, but what stands out to me most is the passion that you speak with. I think entry into the industry is really daunting for a lot of people, whether it's businesses, whether it's individuals wanting to become bud tenders. And it seems clear to me that you're providing a pipeline so that when people go, how do I get into the industry? What do I need to know? There's actually something legitimate and serious there. So I think that's fantastic. And we are going to circle back to really kind of understand that Silk Consulting Operator Academy work so that we kind of know where you are now and where you're headed. I do want to pull it back a little bit because I am really curious about something, and that's the fact that you've lived and worked in Colorado, which is very progressive for cannabis. You mentioned moving back in with your parents while you worked in cannabis. One of the big things we experience here in Australia with people working in the industry is the huge stigma. We still have medicinal only. What were the attitudes around you, about cannabis when you grew up? It seems like, pretty cruisy at times, maybe.
I would say, just to set the stage, I did not grow up with very liberal parents, socially speaking. Um, our community in Maine is also very, very straightforward. They're okay with a 14-year-old drinking a beer, but they're not okay with anybody of any age smoking weed.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
and again, this is back then. Things have changed a little bit now, and people take gummies and they're having a great time. But really, I didn't grow up in an environment that was very pro drug use. It was very, very shamed and frowned upon. So to me, I unfortunately was miseducated and really was under the belief that it's under the same destructive qualities as taking pills that aren't prescribed to you. And it, some things you believe when you're a kid, you don't question twice. And to me, it was just, I just don't want to touch that stuff. It's just not for me. And my father, being Irish and being an immigrant, was just like really not cool with any sort of drug use. Like that was just like not something that they would tolerate in any way, shape, or form. So as being a grown adult, saying that I work in this and this is my job and a serious career path that I'm actually moving forward to, in the beginning it was exploratory, so I can appreciate that the jokes were being made and names were being called, and hemp head, and like, oh, my daughter sells drugs, and sure, jab here, there, whatever. But after a couple of years, it just became, now it's not only me. When I moved to work at Theory, I actually hired my little brother. So now it's my little brother and myself. And I got 2 out of your 3 kids working in dispensaries. So then my mom was saying 2 of my kids sell drugs. So, it took a number of years, a lot of dinners, a lot of conversations to break it down, and a lot of socially responsible use in front of my mom. We went from her being like, your eyes look like crap, and you shouldn't be doing that stuff. It's bad for you, to her really listening to its different uses beyond just a severe medical need. And even dropping stuff off that I forgot in her car, which is just like, to think of if I ever asked my mom that, like, it's just crazy. But she's an angel. So yeah, I think it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of patience and not forcing it on them. And I'm not trying to change anyone's opinions on anything, but if they want to have a conversation about it, this is a special interest. So I do know a few fun facts that I'd be very happy to share. And knowledge is power. I don't think everything's for everybody, but I do think that we should be able to talk about it in a very centrist manner. I'm not here to say cannabis solves every problem, and it does exacerbate some. I think that the more we can just be able to have those conversations without guilt, the better. So I don't know. Kudos to them for meeting me in the middle a little bit. We still got a long way to go, but I'll say this: like, my career is respected. I am respected in what I do by them. Not by all my family. Some of my family still thinks of it as a joke, but unfortunately, that's on them to think that. 10 years in, I don't know how long of a bit I could hold out for.
And it speaks to the passion that you're willing to defy that kind of ignorance at times, head in the sand, whatever it might be. Sometimes just downright disdain. Like there's some people that have had legitimately bad experiences with it, and like you said, we don't want to discount their experience and their beliefs. You got to kind of be passive about it. Just go do the work, see if they'll come and meet you in the middle, and it's cool that you know. Yeah. Your mum's dropping off your doobies that you've left in her car.
Yeah, win's a win.
How does it sit in your life now? Like, as a highly functional adult, how does it work in your lifestyle now? What kind of products do you use? What's your ritual? Go for it.
Yeah, so I would say I'm a concentrate girly through and through. I really love edibles, but unfortunately, they have not been doing what I need. I think my relationship with cannabis has changed pretty drastically over the years. Um, I have chronic Lyme disease, so for a good chunk of time, I'd been using it for pain relief. And then when that really stopped being a need, it just became more of a stress relief. Just in general, like instead of an Adderall or something, it's great for helping focus in different ways. And I really just found much more flexibility and control with concentrates. So I'm indiscriminate when it comes to the solventless conversation. I really respect both sides. I love both. I think I could smoke both all day. I would consider myself a heavy smoker. However, I am not an irresponsible smoker in the way of, I would never consume and then go drive if I felt like I was not, if I felt I was inebriated. I am a mother. I have a 3-year-old. So I am heavily responsible for another human's life. So I just unfortunately don't have the same luxury I used to, where I could just take a bit more of the edibles and really fully relax for an extended period of time. So the dabs are great because they wear off pretty quick. So I can get coverage for a half hour to an hour and sneak out.
That's awesome. I'm always fascinated about the mum side of things, like what it's like, and you've already alluded to it. You do have to pull back a little bit as a parent, but there is still very much a place for mindful consumption as a parent.
So again, he's 3. He doesn't need to see any of this stuff. We don't need to have this conversation just yet. We'll get there one day, but for now, as well, the concentrates are really great because the scent is a problem. I was really a big flower person for a long time, but the smell just lingers too much. And unfortunately, again, speaking back to the judgment that some people have, Brookline is, as much as it's a socially liberal place, it's also very conservative. And I don't need to put it on my forehead that I smoke weed. I think that that's information that I can share with people on that as needed basis. But I don't need everybody knowing it. My kids pick up that, I, that I smoke. So I try to keep a low key presentation, I think. And, maybe one day we can go back to smoking more flower. But for now, my rig and I are pretty close.
Very responsible of you. Very responsible. I love it. I'd love to know about cannabis in Massachusetts. I've been lucky to have guests from kind of the Bay Area on the
Yeah.
West Coast, guests from New York, things like that, to try and really understand at a micro level what it is like to be a cannabis consumer there. Like I said, I've visited a couple of times just after medical legalization the first time. I've not had the privilege of partaking as an adult use user. So in a nutshell, how do locals access cannabis in Massachusetts?
Sure. So, I guess we have a number of legal dispensaries. We do have both the medical and the recreational. Medical got voted in 2015. You didn't start seeing stores till like 2016-ish. And then, recreational went through in 2018, didn't really see stores until like what, 2019, 2020. So we're still pretty new into all of it. You don't really see a ton of product consistency as far as brands or availability across the state. Massachusetts as a whole, I mean, just again for context for people listening, you could drive 3 hours just on the Cape alone, driving from Boston to the tip of the Cape. You could drive from Boston 3 hours to west and still be in Massachusetts. Whereas if you drive north and start going to Maine or to Rhode Island, states that have reciprocity with medical users that will take them from out of state, that we're kind of in a unique place where a lot of people from Massachusetts buy here, but when they have the opportunity to, they are going to those other states because there is more competition, there's better product quality, and the prices are significantly cheaper, especially in Maine. So for your average consumer, we have the highest price per milligram of any product of any category of anywhere in the world. And we have had that for a significant time. Only recently, in the last couple of months, we started to see a significant price compression. And that has to do with the fact that these recreational brands did not and do not have that requirement of vertical integration that medical has. So what you see is people either start as medical and then eventually just get like one or two parts of the process under rec, or they go rec and then they slowly build out the license pipeline for their brand and then apply for medical. There's just a lot more money involved as far as requirements for applying and then also the fees when it comes to medical. So it's not an incentive by any means, except for having that locked in database of patients. Um, and again, I do need to say that I can drive, an hour and a half and be, a pretty good way up in Maine and get more than triple my dollar value. So to people that have the time and have the know-how, they can go direct to caregivers, go direct to the buyers, go to a couple different places there. Here, you have to go through the dispensaries. That's it. Maine and Rhode Island, they have sessions. They're able to do deliveries. Here we have delivery direct to home, but it's only through recreational, really. The medical shops that have it tend to partner with the recreational deliveries. So it just ends up usually like costing quite a bit for the product you're ending up getting. It's not convenient. And again, to speak to kind of the conservative nature of Massachusetts, we don't allow children in dispensaries. We allow them in liquor stores. but Maine does. So, as someone who's a mom, if I need to go purchase, I can't leave my 3-year-old in the car. I have no choice. There's no drive through dispensaries. And if I get delivery, I have to pay you $30, $40 just to even get here because I need to add to the order minimum, or it's products that I don't want, or I have to wait a day. So it's just like there's no real winning. So I feel like for most people, when they go and they buy, they tend to either have a pattern of, and again, this is speaking to the 6, 7, 8 years that I had spent in retail. But people tend to just either buy, once a week and they go in for a little bit, or they tend to like stock up. And there really isn't much in between these days. But again, the prices are coming down. There's more availability. There's more brands. There's more, white label brands. There's really fierce competition as far as shelving space goes. And there's also a number of retail brands that are going out of business. So with these retails kind of going in flux, again, they're they're highly centered to different positive areas in the state. So anywhere that was like pro cannabis that wanted that 3% from those retailers to get back or wanted to be the cannabis center. One great example is Great Barrington, Massachusetts. In a 1 mile area, they have 12 dispensaries just on the same road because it's the gateway to New York. And a lot of people thought that that's where the money is. So there's these like hot spots, but there's not like any sort of real consistency. So it's not to say that the products aren't good or anything, but there's a lot of competition. Again, the pricing models isn't determined by the manufacturer. It's ultimately determined by the retailer. So there's heavy markups, and then a lot of terms for people being put on as individual buyers to say, oh, you need to actually give me a net 60, net 90, and then they're still not going to pay you for another 120 days past that. So it's a lot of robbing Peter to pay Paul. There's a lot of lawsuits going in right now. And with that, we're seeing the effect on the consumer side where a number of brands are just completely disappearing, no longer manufacturing product, or they have a reduction in the size of their workforce or a closure of one of their stores. So a lot of shakeups right now, but I think that we'll start to see some bigger money come in. We're seeing a lot of conversations about trying to move the caps for the number of licenses you can have in total. Upwards of, I think, the 9 was being recommended. So I think people are trying to see those bigger box store style cannabis businesses here, as well as the mom and pops. But unfortunately, the social equity model, the crumbs that they're trying to give to the smaller people, I think, are just really inadequate. And those business owners are really echoing those thoughts. And restrictions, silly restrictions, like a 2-driver rule, any delivery vehicle of any kind. So even if it's just business to business, that needs to have 2 drivers in that. One driver needs to stay in the car at all times. So that's 2 salaries for a small business. That's insane. So I think that there's a long way to go. We also have a lot of political unrest when it comes to our actual regulatory agency. The Cannabis Control Commission was a number of people that were handpicked by our state treasurer. And with that, we've just had a lot of typical political shenanigans that happen anywhere else because these are all state employees from other places that get brought in. So I think it's a little unique to the cannabis industry because these are dirty business tactics that happen elsewhere being brought here. And then cannabis businesses are already dealing with their own cannabis business related problems that have been there and have been there with any other growing state. So I don't think we're really dealing with issues that are super unique to Massachusetts. However, I think the slow implementation of a number of things, as well as a really cautious approach, has just led to a lot of discontent from business owners, has led to a lot of business closures. And people, I think, would argue that it's really held our industry back. You see places like New York, which overnight just legalized anywhere you smoke cigarettes, you can smoke weed. So we're trying to get people to care about things like social consumption here, which is the next big conversation. But again, I feel like with the number of states that are within an extremely reasonable drivable distance, there's fierce competition for how that's going to look. And we're looking to who does things first. And that tends to drive the speed of our development. So to be continued.
It's a unique industry. I've had a couple of people on the show that describe a cannabis year as a dog year. It feels like 7 years.
Well put.
And Conversely, the paradox is that everything moves like molasses. So it's incredibly slow, but incredibly taxing. And I'm not surprised to hear,
Hurry up and wait.
yeah. I'm not surprised to hear kind of tales of dysfunction, especially as it is, a relatively new thing. I think, we had medicinal cannabis legalized here in Australia in 2016. We're 9 years in and people kind of want everything to be perfect already. And we know that we're really just kind of planting seeds for future generations to benefit from. It's hard to kind of dive in and solve all these problems quickly. You've already alluded to the conservatism, the political aspect of things. I was lucky when I worked in Vancouver to see a few quick wins. When we first started getting our deliveries after legalization, it was a guy in a vest with a gun. Everything was brought in like steel coffins. Within about 6 months, they realized that's unnecessary. We had covered up windows, you weren't allowed to see in the store. Within a couple of years, they
Hmm.
got rid of that rule for a safety element. There's still all these little things that need to change, obviously, edible limits and things like that in Canada. What are some quick wins you think you could get in Massachusetts? Or what are kind of the things you're aspiring to change to kind of stop the industry from being held back, to give people greater access and, most importantly, better prices? That's crazy to hear that Massachusetts has got the most expensive prices in the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's not too shocking. One of the positions I used to hold was director of education for a cannabis research company, and during that time, when we polled more than like 5,200 people in Massachusetts, price was the number one thing, and then that was THC, and then after that was quality. But the problem is with a new cannabis industry, people can't really say what quality is. There's no kind of common consensus because the general level of education is wildly all over the place and irregular. Expectation is all over the place, and people's expectations could be from something they remember 30 years ago, or it could be from something they got in a state that has some kind of crazy situation, like or it's maybe just hemp products that are disguised as cannabis products, or maybe it's not even cannabis at all. All of these things have happened, but I think in Massachusetts, we really need to be able to try to educate people and encourage and incentivize people to not necessarily buy by THC. And I think in places like Maine, it's so much easier to do that because there isn't mandated testing. In Massachusetts, we have a regulatory requirement for you to do a nine cannabinoid panel. You have to do mycotoxins, yeasts, and a number of other like pesticides, and depending on what particular product it is, there's a number of other things like hydrocarbons, residual as well. And the problem is I
And these
think
are like thousands of bucks a test, right?
no, not thousands, but definitely hundreds,
Right.
and I think the problem is the requirements for the batch sizing isn't even really representative. There's huge gaps in the ability for people to manipulate the testing from the selection of the product, which is done by the actual customer, not by the lab. And then the lab itself is encouraged to maybe push a matrix to a specific deliverable to keep a client. And there's actually a lawsuit out right now by one of the labs, MCR Labs. They're suing eight of the other labs in Massachusetts, saying that they knowingly have been part of a large scale fraud and consumer deception, which I completely agree with. I mean, sorry to say that manipulating test results is a fraud, specifically what I mean. And I think that if we can try to figure out ways to maybe have pass fails and not necessarily do quantifiable amounts of THC, or if there is better investment in general educational programs which can help people understand experience to other quantifiers. Massachusetts, we have the most highest average educated person, of anywhere in the United States. I think people really want to be able to latch on to something quantifiable. And it is very attractive to say, like, oh, the higher the number, the better it is. However, better is a very personal and subjective thing. And I think that we need to start encouraging people to talk about things from a more effect based or from a more goal based perspective. And it's okay when you're talking about higher dosing when it comes to edibles. But I think when we're talking about flower percentages, it really can actually deter from the product quality. And I think this is something that I learned a lot when I was working in formulating products in the hydrocarbon space. Is just because there's more cannabinoids, it doesn't mean that it's going to get you what you want. And some of those other cannabinoids and fats and parts of that concentrate is really beneficial to spread out the experience. So it's not so focused on your forehead or in your face, or, maybe it's like actually just too much. So I think that there's, consumer education, the changing in the testing, at least how we do it or how we standardize it or how we present that information publicly. And again, I don't think I have all the answers there, but I do think that it's up for conversation already. And I'm really interested to see what people have to say on that. And then lastly, just continuing to listen to the operators who are doing this. I mean, it seems like we're screaming to the abyss, and there's really no system of accountability when it comes to the regulators. A number of years ago, one of the board members actually looked around and asked, like, do we have the authority to enforce what we're doing? Which is a valid question. Sure, whatever. You're appointed by a bunch of state level reps. They voted that they do, and then they straight up said, but we don't want to. So, so it's just a classic case of just like, gerrymandering around. And I just don't feel like there's a lot of effort into actually dedicating people's energy at the regulatory level into creating a system that really works for everybody. It feels like it's just for looks. So, I can only imagine what great things we would do if I felt that we had regulators that were much more open to listening, about what the people who have been boots on the ground, who are really affected by this, and take it into consideration. And, I think that maybe with this new wave of people coming in, that could be it. We just got a new executive director signed in like 2 weeks ago, so too soon to say much of anything, but I always am holding out hope. Massachusetts has a near and dear place to my heart, and I think that there's so many people that want this to be a win. The nation looks to us for so many different examples in healthcare and technology, and to not do it in this industry would just be such a lost opportunity. So, we got a ways to go.
Is there any role that federal legalization could play in, improving things? I know this is a kind of different can of worms, especially in a country that is heavily focused on states' rights. Do you think, irrespective of what the media is saying about Trump's position, things like that, irrespective of party that's in power, would a federal legalization improve things in your state, or do you think it would further complicate things?
Well, it depends what specifically. I think that what what's been reinforced in the last couple of years is that there are many different branches of our government that do not talk to each other.
Yeah.
So if we're talking just the IRS in the banking, to be able to make that more flexible as far as deductions for labor costs, or just for accessibility of funds. I've seen so many friends have funds seized, or had complications with holding bank accounts where they just say, we don't want to deal with your money. Also, the very real problem of working in retail and having your physical cash smell like weed. One of our clients, we had to arrange an entire separate process and pay for money cleaning services because it smelled so much. So
Wow.
there are some like very real weird problems like that I think could be addressed. However, if we're talking about opening up the floodgates of saying, everybody anywhere could now open a store, that's where I think I get a little concerned, because I think the states' rights is a good thing for people to be able to say what works for them and what doesn't work for them. And I think it would really make a number of these shops independently completely obsolete. People who have a lot more money to be able to spread out. Walmart would just have an entire cannabis section of their store overnight. And it's not to say that that's good or bad, but it's just to say that at that scale, to then take away, we're looking at places like Kentucky that could have outdoor grows of hectares of space, and it's not a problem. We can't compete with that in Massachusetts. So it would be cool to have interstate transport, be able to get things from out of state. However, it does run a lot of complications when you then get into the nitty gritty of, okay, how are we actually doing this? So I'm not too upset that people are pumping the brakes. I'm hoping that there's a lot of intentional conversations being had. I know a number of lobbyists who work to try to combat a lot of efforts of some of these larger packs like CPEER, and it's a contentious conversation where there's a lot of big money at play and people are very interested in getting those floodgates opened up. But I think that there are just too many people who are scared of cannabis and what it'll do to people. So hopefully the conservative nature of our government actually plays in, positively in that right because I do want to do it safely. And again, I think it's always dangerous when you're opening things up to people who have had no exposure to it, and we just don't have a formal and successful way of really properly educating people. We still can't agree on much of anything in cannabis. Like that's the common consensus, is that no one will agree on anything. So to try to say that we could just do that, I think is wacky. But I would love to see in my lifetime a lot more flexibility because there's so many people that could benefit from the access. And right now, these loopholes we're seeing that have been super successful has been the THCA weed. This
Yep.
kills me. It's hemp. So it's a fully legal hemp registered product, but it's some fire weed that people are selling as a hemp product and then shipping in the mail because they have a COA to say what it is.
Right.
So more power to them. However, chemically identical to cannabis, it, so we're back to the $50 baggie with the gift of weed, if you ask me. But
Yeah, can you actually explain that for my listeners? Because that's a fascinating concept. I think Washington, D.C., something like that, you'd buy a sticker and here's your free weed.
yeah, so super common tactic back in the day was, oh, you're buying a t-shirt or you're giving a donation or you're buying a sticker. Those are pretty up there. And then they would give you the weed as a gift. And that was the way of people skirting around saying you're making a direct purchase of cannabis. Um, However, in court, time and time again, people have proven that it's not a good idea.
That's a bit of stoner logic right there. It's like, yeah,
Yeah,
gets me by today, doesn't necessarily hold up in front of a judge.
yeah, exactly.
We're going to take a little pause from our full-on cannabis conversation to have fun with a bit of a quiz here. This is a game called Hotbox, where in this quiz I will ask you would you rather style questions related to the cannabis industry with a 60-second countdown clock. Does that sound all right?
That sounds fun. I feel like I'm on Cash Cab.
Oh, I felt like I had all the lights and bells and whistles. Here we go. Best thing about working with cannabis.
Ooh, all the people I get to meet, all the different walks of life,
Worst thing about working in cannabis.
all the people I have to deal with on a regular basis.
You're not the first. Whether you believe in these labels or not, indica, sativa, or hybrid.
I've come to respect sativas. I think they're really cool. They're pretty scrappy. They grow in really interesting climates.
Flower or edibles.
Ooh, edibles,
Joints or blunts.
joints,
Bongs or pipes.
bongs,
This might be triggering in the middle of a Massachusetts winter. Summer or winter.
have winter.
Favorite place to consume cannabis.
My living room.
Favorite cannabis product on the market right now.
I really love batters. It's just the same in every scoop, and that really pleases me for some reason. Rosin, there's so much variability with the different Turk pockets. Some other stuff gets a little too soupy, so it's, I don't know, the happy jelly in the middle.
The concentrate girly. Lucky last, describe your perfect 420.
Well, in Boston, it's like right when things are starting to get warm. Usually there's some nice outdoor events. So go for a walk outside, meet up at the common, do a nice little ceremonial toke if possible, and then just head out for the rest of the day, go out for the night, get a nice dinner. Usually we find a place where they're pretty cannabis relaxed. So we usually just smoke in the back room and just dab it out.
Right on.
And yeah.
Sounds absolutely delightful. Well, thank you for playing Hotbox. It was a pleasure. Let's circle back now to our cannabis conversation, particularly your work in Silk Consulting and Operator Academy. Silk started in 2018. Good Life Gang started in 2019 and Operator Academy in 2022. Like you said, you're kind of constantly moving. You're making sure that new things are happening. Sum up this work. You have described it already, but sum up this work, kind of what you have been doing and what's on the table right now with these projects.
Yeah, so Silk Consulting was my kind of play on Silk Road because originally I had really thought that I would do stuff in cannabis, but eventually I'd probably focus a little bit more on a broader psychedelic range. So originally, that was really the focus there, and I'm still working with clients today, and that's really a little bit more on the operational side of things. Focusing a bit more on manufacturing is where we start the conversation with the Good Life Gang. That is a private networking group that's an offshoot from the world's largest and most trafficked online open data forum for cannabis manufacturing and cultivation, called the Future 4200 Forum. And really, what I've done with them is hosted a number of meetups and events focused regionally in New England, but as well helping with some of the larger, more foundational events that we do out at MJ BizCon every year. And really, my focus has been to try to bring together more community from some of these conversations we have online. It's a highly technical focused community. So, a lot of heated discussions and arguments that then get brought to life in person. And we have a lot of what we call whiteboard sessions. So, it's kind of like ramblings of a bunch of mad wizards in the corner and expo markers flying. And it's just really great to see these really passionate people who otherwise work very, very much in their labs come to life at these events, talk with other people that do very similar things, and they're really excited and open about sharing their innovations and what they're doing and seeing how other people can kind of help extend on that. And then, other than that, the Operator Academy, like I said, is a bit of an evolution of the consulting. And I'm building an online virtual community membership site. So the focus is to have a number of paid courses, but as well, really focus on building out free resources that focus on a number of foundational things from industrial hygiene, just safety in general, and then moving into more technical and manufacturing fun how-tos. I call my videos very much a combination between a how it's made kind of faceless instructional video meets a little bit more of a coming to life Bill Nye the Science Guy,
Right on.
informative personal discussion. So it's a bit of a focus on getting people introduced to the right topics, but then additionally the right advanced experts that they can then continue to learn with outside of Operator Academy. So partly a educational endeavor, but additionally partly community, and really focusing on trying to continuously bring people back to having conversations about things that matter in the industry, and focus on why we're all here, which is to grow as individuals, grow as an organization, and then grow as an industry. And I think we can only really do that by coming together. So yeah, working in a number of different rights and really just filling my time with those things. And I guess the other thing that I'm doing a lot of as well is last year I started working with a couple of people from the Future 4200 Forum, as well as an organization called NAP, which is the Network for Applied Pharmacognosy.
Dr. Riley Kirk, shout out.
Yeah, we started doing a panel series called Weird Brains, which was really a neurodiversity, inclusion, and celebratory panelist discussion that we had at a number of events. We keynoted at one of the conferences at NECAM last year. And this year we're coming back to do another five shows, iterations of that. So all on the conversation of neurodiversity in the industry, and we kind of tailor it to each show. So some of them are much more business and like ROI focused. Other ones are a bit more esoteric and talking about, how does someone with weird brains kind of relate to, cannabis versus psychedelic use on a personal level. And then some are just really kind of that happy middle place of, career advice and just personal anecdotes and just crowd participation. So we had a phenomenal response last year. We are going to come back for this year, and between those things, I'm pretty busy.
Very much so. I do love the idea of weird brains, and I think that's something that kind of really speaks to me when it comes to cannabis. It's something that's always, it's, again, I hate quoting him, but Joe Rogan said, like, cannabis doesn't make him paranoid, it makes him sensitive, and people mistake those two things for, being the same feeling. But for me, someone with a bit of a weird brain myself, it calms me down and makes me focus and makes me centered. That kind of sensitivity is a good thing. That paranoia is a good thing for me. So, I mean, it does circle back. How does it work for your weird brain?
Just organizes the cats, as I say. It's just, I am a late diagnosed autistic person. I was raised in a family where 2 out of every 3 of the different sets of kids on my many, many aunts and uncles side on my dad's Irish family, they're autistic and on the spectrum. Some are nonverbal, and I grew up with them. Others kind of like, quote, grew out of their diagnosis. So for me, I'm still pretty new to this. However, for a number of years, I kind of put 2 and 2 together through diagnoses that didn't sound right and a number of other things. So now I'm, diagnosed ADHD, so that's ADHD and autism. And for me, I'm what they are calling now a level one autistic. So I can very much pass to things. And it's weird because I thrive in stress, which is why in emergency medicine I did so well. Like I'm not stressed at all, actually, because all of this input to me was really calming. So working in cannabis is great because everything's in crisis, right? All the
Yeah.
time. Everything needed to get done yesterday. The timelines are typically very pleasing for my brain. However, the intensity of the conversations and the emotion coming from people is what I kind of dread. So, jokingly, what I said earlier is the people is the most difficult part. But really, what I mean is there's so much passion and dedication and personal investment that is given to this industry that it's really hard for people to not take that out on you in a lot of different ways. And regardless of if you're a consultant, if you're an employee, if you're a business partner, whatever, like no one's immune. So for me, I've got a pretty thick skin. However, the cannabis use helps me create a bit of a buffer, not only mentally giving me the space in between the reaction and perceiving the interaction, but it also just helps me kind of put on like the horse blinders of I don't need to really focus on all of these things that are hypervigilance that make me really good at being on site at jobs. But when I'm at a conference, I don't need that. I need to be able to sit here and listen to the person talking in front of me, give them a solid 5 minutes, and then keep it going. So it's helping me channel my energy into a more meaningful way without the use of other aids. And to other people, they like smoke cigarettes or they drink coffee, and like that's not me. I just like my weed, please. So for me, I'd say it's that. And then there's definitely the relaxation slash social aspect. I'm getting older, so unfortunately my stomach does not love alcohol as much as I remembered it did. And I think with that, the cannabis use is great because I can get recreationally adequately where I need to be, and then I can go to sleep and wake up the next day feeling rested and pretty good. So for me, it's all about like a harm reduction lifestyle and then using it intermittently to be able to just reduce the level of stress in my life. And whether that's kind of like toning it down and tamping down the noise, or it's actually just hyper focusing. Like we talked about the love for sativas. I'm a huge landrace lover. I really fell in love with once I got the tolerance, I think is the asterisk here of this entire conversation. I really started to enjoy the concept.
What's up?
City living. I really started to love a lot of landrace strains that were sativa. So there was a lot of like golden lemons, and I'd say in general the Durban poison has just been a real good aid for me to just help focus. So I think as well, these are all just tools in my toolkit. And for me, I've had enough time and enough experiences with these substances to really be able to use, bits and pieces for different effects, layer them. And I feel very comfortable with that. So for me, it's been a real joy. Like it's taken many years and a lot of conversations with myself before, during, after my use, a lot of critical conversations, and trying a ton of different stuff. So, you know, I have to like preface all of this by saying I am extremely grateful for having a number of friends in this industry that do give me things that I would otherwise, not be able to afford or wouldn't get because things are just expensive. But just as well, the people that really take the time to be able to explain why stuff is different and why you should care about this versus that. So, I didn't do it alone, but I did it.
It's the weirdest medicine because I know like we've got this very legitimate system over here, but I can say to my doctor, yeah, look, I was hanging out with a friend the other day and they had X sativa and I gave it a try. Like there's
Yeah.
no other drugs really. You can be like, yeah, I was hanging out the other day and he had some heroin and it was really top stuff. So can you give me some of that? So I do appreciate that about cannabis, that there is this unwritten law and this unwritten respect where it's like, hey, this takes a lot of discovery and a lot of figuring out. That can be expensive. So some sharing needs to happen.
Yeah, and I think that the difference too, culturally speaking, like people aren't stingy with weed. And if you are, that's kind of a red flag. I feel like it's in the nature and the spirit of the plant, as woo-woo as that sounds, it is. You want to share it with other people. It's not something you have like the hoarding energy of. And again, just it speaks to how people are so proud of all the work they put into this thing, and then additionally, just how excited they are to share what they're excited about. And then they want to be able to have you say that their shit's the best. So it's a little self-serving, but I think in the end it's a positive thing.
So as we get to the tail end, I do just want to circle back to Operator Academy and kind of think about primarily who's your clientele and what edge do they have over people who are not using your services?
Yeah, thank you so much. I just spent the last 2 or so years doing informational interviews with people, United States and beyond, license holders, technicians. So, over 238 individual interviews were completed. And really, that's what I created my entire course curriculum off of. So, this isn't some, regulatory mandated BS. This isn't, something that you're going to sit in for an hour and a half and pay $200 and get a little gold star that's going to be your regulatory sign off. However, this is going to complement that, and this is going to make your employees not only better advocates for their own safety, for liability deterrence when it comes to your facility, and then additionally for helping you better focus on all of the stuff that makes your brand special. My aim is to take off the base layer, that boring stuff of the business, to try to really set the standard for this is how we work, this is how we work efficiently, this is how we work safely, and now this is how we continue to build on our craft. So, I created this off of those interviews and then started to work to build, alliances or collaborations with a number of trade organizations. I've jokingly been referring to them as the alphabet mafia, but the ASME, ASTM, NFPA, OSHA, ISO, UL, they're all a mouthful. But really, what they are is they are leaders in safety and workforce education when it comes to really all of the things that support us just being well in the workplace. And I think that that's the absolute bare minimum that we can do for people. Again, I've worked in this industry for 10 years. I've seen some really horrific things happen, very silly mistakes that have led to serious lifelong consequences for the people that were on the other side of them, and a huge liability and risk on the business. So I felt personally really pushed to do this out of my own experience. And then throughout the development of this, there was actually the first recorded cannabis industry death. So that happened in Massachusetts over in Holyoke and Trulieve. And it happened because currently, the way the regulations stated at that time, occupational hazard wasn't considered cannabis dust. So there's all this ground cannabis dust that's creating this allergen response. And she had an allergic asthma attack. And then that built up over time. The second time it happened, she went to the hospital and she died. So this really just continues to drive my mission of nobody should die for cannabis. Nobody should die for mids. Nobody should die or be worried about if they're not going to come home. And I think that really what I'm trying to do is get people introduced to the topics that they should care about. I don't anticipate everybody is going to be an expert in everything. And cannabis as an industry is so, 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 so difficult because it does require you to do that. You have to be an expert in business, in regulations. You have to be able to know and understand all these agencies to work with, and there's nobody pointing it out. You just figure it out. So unfortunately, in previous industries, the triangle shirt fire is a really great example in the United States of a horrific workplace accident that led to a number of safety initiatives that are still fundamental to what we do today. I see that very much the same in cannabis, and I hope that we don't continue to see this path of destruction leading to positive change, and rather we just continue to preemptively have these conversations and try to continuously learn from the people that are doing these repetitive actions every day. So really what I try to aim to do is not only bring the community together so that they can learn from each other, I introduce them to more advanced based experts that they can then go hire, learn from, purchase products from, and really just be kept in the loop of like what the next layer of technology is going to be. And the last little project that I'm working on that I'm super excited about is going to be a resource library. So it's a visual resource library that not only goes into brand specifics for different items, it really speaks about automation and speaks about a number of different tools, whether it's softwares or hardware that can be implemented in the lab to help reduce workplace errors, to help with any sort of tracking. That's a big thing, tracking whether it's temperature or remote monitoring or remote operating. So really just introducing people to the number of very niche tools that are specific to cannabis manufacturing and maybe retrofitted for our industry, but really trying to get people to focus on the right things when it comes to cannabis training. And then trying to stay out of the special sauce, really just trying to let them then from there say, okay, now these are the products that we do. This is our brand ethos. And I've had a number of successful clients. One of my most recent ones is in Massachusetts. We're just coming off of redefining their hydrocarbon program. That was an in-person project that we did over the number of months and developed new batter, which I'm very proud of. Check out Harbor House if you can in Chelsea. And I really say that, I'm very proud to say that we provide a superior level of dedication to our customer support. I take it very personally that my clients, when I see a number of consultants that really bring this industry down by just providing services that don't really go anywhere. So I am very results driven and very data and fact based. And I think that what really separates me, like I said, is, we work with a number of subject matter experts to develop it. So you don't have someone in front of you saying, I'm the expert in everything, because I'm really not. However, I have worked with them to help develop this coursework to then integrate seamlessly into your business. So we work with people who just want to buy the courses to be able to invest in themselves or to invest in their business. And then we offer a number of bespoke solutions, which really is a bit more on-site, hands-on technical training, which then further integrates that in the real person environment with or without the online components.
Is there any consultation or even just comment, like a little friendly little rub on the head, like "good job, champ," from like the Cannabis Control Commission or any of the authorities? Like, are they, they would have to be aware of the work you're doing. Are they supportive? Are they dismissive?
Yeah.
No comment.
No, thank you for asking. I think I have a very positive relationship with a number of these regulatory agencies, specifically New York and New Jersey. I've been working on a personal level with a number of the people who are in charge of their training education or are specifically interested in it and on their boards. And when these new courses do come online, the focus is to try to get them to be approved for advanced base core curriculum for Massachusetts, which is basically like a gold star for you completing extra work. But additionally, I help people, really be able to understand where we're moving towards. So also moving towards getting these classes and courses standardized by organizations like ASTM and ASME, who would be pushing it as standards worldwide. So it's kind of a dual effort where I am attacking them from the state level regulatory agencies, but just as well, the trade organizations really has been a huge focus, unions as well, really just trying to go for the top and then have it all trickle down.
Very cool. Very cool. I'm going to take a moment to reflect on something that my mind has changed on over the last couple of years, and you've brought it to my attention, and I need to address it because one of my earliest episodes, I had a good friend on, and we kind of mocked the idea. We did mock the idea of allergies to cannabis. I think it's coming from a defensive place of like, oh yeah, sure, that doesn't exist. You're just trying to get out of smoking weed. And you've proven today, both with your own reaction as a trimmer and then more seriously as that first industrial death. Like, I did not expect you to say it was going to be an allergen response. I thought it might be an industrial,
Yeah.
machinery collapses or something. So, we're always learning. We're always I think it's important to show your vulnerabilities and weaknesses. That is something I was wrong on, and I'm really grateful you shared those things today and that I could, firmly change my mind on that because it is something I've disparaged in the past.
Yeah, and honestly, so did her employer. So
Yeah.
much so that they shuffed it off and she died. It's a condition called occupational asthma, and I would really encourage people to go take the time to look up what that means because there's standardized, set particle sizes of dust put by OSHA and by other countries' different regulators. And really, what the focus is that they just didn't say that cannabis could possibly be part of that, which is so silly because it's just like, why does it matter? Like, isn't a particle a particle a particle at some
Yeah.
point?
Yeah.
However, additionally, once you start really investigating the growth patterns of the plant and like why different aspects of the plant are there, terpenes are essential oils at their most basic form. However, each one of those has a very specific deterrent property. And when they're found in nature, it's either going to be protecting it from the sun, it's going to be deterring a pest, or it's going to be deterring a predator or sending a hormonal signal. And so you start kind of looking at all these different things, and it's like, oh, okay, so of course I would have an allergy to pollen. Like, and again, if you just put it in the words, you're just like, oh, of course. But we just have this system where, again, it's not an incentive to any organization to claim that they want to oversee safety. So that's why, unfortunately, this has to come from the internal part of our industry, and it has to be worker led. And so, this is my very humble attempt at trying to get different parties at the same table to continue to talk about it, because just as well, there's many other health conditions, that we're just learning about, like CHS, cannabis hyperemesis syndrome. It's cyclical vomiting that happens from what they believe to be overconsumption of cannabis. However, the cure for it is stopping consume cannabis, hot showers, or putting hot pepper lotion on your arms. Like, it's just so crazy. You start learning more and more about this, and it's just really a wormhole. But I think, again, it goes back to the fact that I think we should all be open to hearing other people's experiences, believing that their experience is just as valid as our own lived experience and what we know today, and continuing to try to invest in research and however that may look, and getting it out into as many hands as possible, because these things are staying in individual companies and individual labs. And I think that people and put context to things, and I think sometimes we're looking at such a narrow use case that we're not really putting it out to the masses and allowing them to then say, oh wow, this actually really resonates because XYZ. So, long way to go in that regard.
Very much so. Well, thank you for helping me identify a blind spot of mine and changing my mind. We are at the end of this show, and the final segment is called Polls of Wisdom. Though we value the long form conversation, we try to leave the listener with one key takeaway, dinner party fact, or even a call to action. So, Kate, what is your poll of wisdom?
Ooh, I like that. I think it would be, in general, we need to continue to challenge our own stigmas and understanding of cannabis. I think that the more people, even people who have been in it for 10 years or more, that can be quick to say, I don't know everything, but I do know this, this, and this. I think the more we can continue to lean into what we don't know as much as what we do know, we can leave space for people to feel vulnerable and open up on things that otherwise may have been taboo conversations. And in a world where, unfortunately, our social media and our news is so polarized and it incentivizes a lot of negative reactions and high emotions, I think cannabis is a really beautiful thing, because not only is the consumption and the sharing such a great power exchange, again, that idea of like, I have something that I can give to you that maybe you could enjoy. It's also just, a physical gift, which is always just cool. Who doesn't love gifts? But really, it comes down to, again, this notion of a lot of things that we're losing in our society, connection, community, just this general idea of, not everything needs to be political. We can just exist here for a minute, cool it, and really just be. And I think that I hope more people can be open to the concept of a variety of uses for cannabis, that there's no one right way to consume, or there's no one right product, that no one product is better than another. These are personal beliefs based off systems that are unique to every individual. So the more open-minded we can be, I think the better we can continue to evolve. And the faster we're going to get closer to seeing the products that you as a consumer want to see on shelves and see it out in the world. So be a safe consumer, be a responsible advocate, show people what responsible consumption looks like, and show them what a stoner looks like. There's no one way a stoner looks. And I think more people that can speak about it, and again, not shove it at people, the better.
Take that word back. We've got to take it back. I love it. Kate,
We're taking it back.
Kate, it's been such a delight to talk to you today, from, your vulnerability and conversations about your own experiences, your upbringing, to now, to the amazing work you're doing with Operator Academy and Silk Consulting, and just getting a picture of what it's like for the Massachusetts consumer to access cannabis. I didn't realize that it was as much of a challenge as it is. So thank you for all your stories. Thank you for all your passion, and good luck with everything.
Of course, thank you. And next time you want to come check out a Celtics game, hit me up. We'll go toke one before you go to the game.
Hell yeah, a bit of green before the green. Let's go Celtics.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.